Hey everybody, it's Brian back here at Provision Studios, and this is a video that is going to be a sort of a look in over a couple different things that I've done here within the last 24 hours with the Canon VIXIA HF G50. I was making a video last night of the evaluation. I've had this camera for about a week, and when I first took it out of the box and looked at it, I was blown away. I was like, "Oh wow, this is the perfect camera for Brian in his studio." And then in the days after the next couple of days after that, reading the manual and watching videos on YouTube about the camera, the settings and the functionality of it. The deeper I dug into the camera, the more faults I started finding, to the point where it was hard for me to find strengths. And what I mean is, last night I was in the studio where this camera has shined, and I was doing a studio camera test where I'd have two cameras on opposite sides shooting in and providing me talking to you type talking head angles, where I can look at you and say, this is why I'm doing this in this song, or this is how I use this plugin, and it gives me a way to be face-to-face direct with my viewers and my subscribers in a way I like to talk to people. And one of the angles, I'm about to show the footage here in a second, one of the angles, if you'll notice up in the back behind me over my shoulder, there is there's a sign that I got for Christmas that talks about a Dallas Cowboy fan cave, and it's leaning on the wall over by my keyboard, on top of my keyboard stand. And the original angle for that shot was the Sony FDR-AX53. And when I imported the footage in, I was like, okay, good, that looks great. Then I swapped cameras, moving the G50 over to the side where the AX53 just was, and vice versa. And the same angle, the same shot, same everything. And I was just noticing some crazy, I don't know the proper term for it, noise in the sign. A static sign, not moving anywhere, camera not moving. The only thing that was moving in the frame was yours truly. And I'm noticing aberrations in the sign that's just there. And I'm saying to myself, what the heck is going on? This camera that I need to be strong in the studio, because this is where I'm going to use it over probably 3/4 of its life, is going to be in this room, probably over there on that side, which is where I wanted it to replace this. I wanted this to be my new A camera. I wanted it to replace my Sony FX7, which has been over there on my left side, off to my side there, for the last 10 years. If I've been talking to you, I've been talking into this. And I've never seen anything like that. Certainly not on this Sony or the Sony AX53. And that's what this footage shows right here. So it made me really pissed off, because I'm saying to myself, well, what is going on with this camera? It's falling apart right in front of my eyes. Everything it did day one, it no longer does. It's like the camera has, the more features I have unearthed with the camera, the worse the camera's gotten. I'd be better off to in my mind, I'm saying I'd be better off to reset this thing to factory settings and not touch it. Just hit the record button. And because it seems to me the footage was better then. I know I'm wrong. I know that's not accurate. That's just kind of the mental tug of war I mentioned in yesterday's video that I'm having with this camera right now. It's like I've seen a chink in the armor, and now I'm hyper analyzing it. Everything this camera does now, I'm looking at it with a skeptic's eye. As opposed to the first day I got it, when I fired it on, I was looking at it like I was ready to go on a 20-year love affair. The honeymoon's over. So the footage I'm about to show you was taken this morning outside of my backyard, doing a full stabilization test side by side with the Sony AX53. This is how the test was done. I used the same settings on both cameras, other than the G50 was in manual mode, because I wanted to take advantage of, not take advantage. I wanted to show you guys the camera in the way I was going to use it while I bought it. I didn't want to show it in auto mode if I had no intentions of ever using it in auto mode. So I set it up, set the shot, set my my iris. It has built-in ND filters, so that's an excellent feature. So it was able to, based on my exposure setting, it was able to adjust the ND filters based on the sunlight to create the proper exposure that I was asking the camera to give me. I set my my frame rate, my shutter speed, my gain. Actually, I had zero gain because I was outside. You don't need it in daylight. And the stabilization. I started out with the stabilization off in both cameras, and you're going to see that how I go from one to the other. And I'll put a text, a title on the video, so you'll see exactly what settings were being used in each frame. And then at the very end, after I ran through the stabilization modes on both cameras, I took both cameras in my hand and walked around with one in one hand and one in the other, so we could actually see the footage side by side. And I haven't looked at that footage yet. I have not looked at the side by side footage yet. I have looked at the stepping through the stabilization footage on both cameras, and my early, again, this is before looking at the side by sides, my early feedback on that is that neither camera excelled handheld with stabilization off. The Sony was better. It was better. It was better in all levels, but it has an extra level of stabilization that this Canon G50 doesn't. But that's not the point. Both cameras showed why you need a gimbal, even with the advanced stabilization that the AX53 has. It's still in full intelligent stabilization or steady shot. It still showed why, it's a camcorder that you don't really walk around with and expect to get great footage. But neither camera would have gotten a passing grade from me. The Canon's just really hard to, view. So I apologize in advance if I cause any motion sickness on anyone, but it has to be done. This is a test that has to be done for the sake of humanity. Anyway, in the highest level of stabilization, I do want to, on the Canon, I do want to add this. When I went back and looked at the footage, there were moments where as I was looking at it, not through the viewfinder, but as I was looking at it on my computer, I said, that's good. That's good stabilization. So I know what I was doing when I got that quality of stabilization. So I can replicate that. So that is a couple notches up for this camera that I didn't necessarily have when I woke up this morning. And you guys will see what I'm talking about when I start the footage. I'm going to come back after I have looked at the stabilization side by side and give you my final conclusion on the stabilization test between the Canon VIXIA HF G50 and the Sony FDR-AX53. Let's jump into that footage right now. Sony AX53, one of my experiment. I'm in 1080p, shooting 24 frames per second. White balance is set to outdoor mode, and more importantly, the image stabilization in this camera, I have it turned off. I'm going to do some walking around. I'm going to hold this similar to how I was holding the G50, which was down in front of me, both hands on the camera, trying to balance it as evenly as I could. This camera is in auto mode. There's really nothing more I can do. I can set spot focus and gain. I can set my shutter. But then if I want to set something else to do with exposure, then my shutter speed goes to manual, or I'm sorry, goes to automatic, which is not what I want to do. I want to be able to control my shutter speed. So anyway, all right, I'm gonna cut this, and I'm gonna go to the regular stabilization on this camera, and then I'm going to switch to the full stabilization, which is the intelligent stabilization. Okay, everyone, I'm out in my backyard. I have the Canon VIXIA HF G50 in my hand, and I am in my the second half of my test for the stabilization. I presently have stabilization turned off on the G50, or G50. I want to compare it to the levels of image stabilization that are on the Sony AX53. I started off with both stabilizers off on both cameras to give a fair representation of the levels of stabilization that each camera possesses, so that everyone can see exactly what we're looking at. 1080p, 24 frames per second, 1/48th of a second shutter. I am in a white balance and outdoor mode. On the Canon it's called daylight. On the Sony it's called outdoor. I'm 0 dB of gain. The ND filter is on the Canon, which is a nice feature. It does have ND filters that it automatically puts on to adjust to your exposure setting. Which again is the reason why I bought the camera. I wanted a camera that had I had more control over what I was shooting, instead of just basically only having control of one aspect of the exposure. So that's what this camera's doing right now in regards to the exposure, is why I wanted this camera. All right, I'm going to cut this footage now and switch over. I'm going to turn the image stabilization on, and then we'll take a look at that footage. All right, here we go. All right, I'm back on with the AX53. I am in standard stable mode. Stable shot is set in standard. That's what it's called on here. Um, so this is standard. I'm walking around holding the camera in both hands out in front of me. I'm not holding it like with one hand in the grip like a camcorder is normally held. I like holding it out in front of me to try to get a little more stable footage. So I'm just using the AX53 right now, so I can then switch over to the G50 and do the same type of test out here in my yard. Okay, and this was standard stabilized mode. I'm just walking around out here, 1080p, 24 frames per second. Shutter is at 1/48, and pretty much the white balance is set for outdoor. The camera's pretty much in auto mode, or not pretty much. The camera is in auto mode for all other settings on the camera, and that's the thing with the Sony AX53. It gives you limited control. All right, so let's go to the next mode. All right, I have the standard image stabilization turned on the Canon VIXIA HF G50. All other settings are the same. Other than the stabilizer is now on. I'm handheld. Camera is in both hands, being held out in front of me. I am walking very, not intently, but I'm walking very cautiously. I'm trying to make sure that the camera that I am not imparting extra shake than what can be expected. This is the standard stabilization, 1080p. .24 frames per second, 1/48 shutter. Out here in my backyard. All the damage you see, by the way, is from the 2018 Hurricane Michael. I had over 30 trees that were down in my yard, 5 on the house. This is all completely rebuilt. That's the new air conditioner we got from the insurance. 2 trees fell right here, one on top of each other, crushing my son's window. If not for the window being there, I don't know that there would have been any real structural damage. The house was built in 1968 with excellent wood. That's what the guys that came in said, that the frame of the house was superbly built. Anyway, let's go to the next level of stabilization in our test. All right, we are now in active steady shot. Which is the second tier of steady shot on the Sony FDR-AX53. You got standard, active, and then the next one is the intelligent, which is what we're going to go to next after this footage is in the can. Again, I'm just shooting this so I can get an ability to see the difference between this and the G50's footage in the same shooting scenario. Apples to apples, so to speak. And then when I'm done with this, I'm actually going to do a side-by-side of these cameras in my hand, one in one hand, one in the other, both recording with their maximum image stabilization turned on. All right, let's go to the next level. All right, the intelligent active image stabilization, or steady shot, I'm sorry, the intelligent active stable shot is now turned on the Sony AX53. I normally don't use this. I normally use active, which is like this the middle uh, level of a steady shot on this camcorder. So we're just walking around in my yard. I'm being careful in how I walk. I'm being careful in how I hold the camera. I'm not being purposeful in an attempt to make this camera appear jittery. I'm trying to control the amount of movement that is in my hand, or to shake. I'm trying to limit the amount of shake by walking carefully and, you know, not trying to just plod through my backyard. Okay, we're going to move over now to the G50. I mean, the G50. Okay, all right. Okay, dynamic stabilizer is now enabled. This is the highest level of image stabilization that the Canon VIXIA HF G50 provides on board. So we're looking at the maximum amount of stabilization you get with this camera while doing handheld shots. And again, I am walking with both hands on the camera out in front of me, and I am trying to walk like I'm shooting video, with trying to get the most non-shaky footage I can. I've done this with both cameras in all settings of stabilization, both on and off. I'm trying to get a really clear baseline comparison between the two cameras of what they are capable of doing with their stabilization. So let me do it. I'm no longer walking right now. I'm just panning around. This is how I would use this camera. That's why I'm doing it like this. And the kind of shooting I like to do when I'm out in nature, this is kind of how I do it. I don't put my hand through the strap and hold the camera like up by my head. I hold it down out in front of me with the monitor turned up, facing upward, so I can see what I'm shooting and getting sort of a waist high view. And I can always tilt back like this if I want to get aerial, and obviously I can tilt down like this if I want to get a ground shot, or bend at the knee to get various, angles. Which again, when you go off of Canon's website, when they talk about their 5-axis stabilization, it sounded to me like this was going to be the perfect camera for how Brian Buckaloo likes to shoot video. I was like so excited, So anyway, let's go and do I have the intelligent auto on the Sony AX53 is the last setting I had, and I have got the active stabilization on this enabled. So I'm going to go back, grab the AX53, and do a handheld side-by-side walkthrough. All right, let's go get that done. All right, guys. Right now, what we have here is we have the Canon VIXIA AX53 in my left hand, and the Sony FDR-AX53 in my right hand. Image stabilization of the highest level is turned on for both cameras, and I am walking around in my backyard. Again, one camera in each hand, so I am literally mimicking. They're both seeing the exact same thing right now. Obviously offset by the width that my arms are at, which is about a foot apart. And I'm just walking around out here in my backyard. Again, this is full stabilization on, shooting at 1080p, 30 frames per or 24 frames per second, with 1/48 shutter, outdoor mode,
is the setting for the white balance on both cameras. And I'm doing a steady pan where I am not walking right now. I'm just twisting my torso. Let me go walk down. I'm going to go to my drop down over here. It's a little bumpy here. I'm trying to take my time. All right, I'm about to walk down to my drop down here. Several steps I walk down. Okay. This was the pride and joy of my property when we bought it. There were all trees out here. Only a couple remain now. But this was all a gorgeous tree canopy. There was hardly any grass out here because the grass couldn't grow. There was just all shade. And my son used to ride his go-karts here, out here. All right, so the only difference in the two cameras is the Sony is in auto mode with its exposure other than the shutter. The shutter I have set manually. Outside of that, everything is being controlled by the Sony's sensors. The G50, the Canon G50 on the other hand, I have in manual mode, which is, I wanted to test it in manual mode because that's how I want to use this camera. I have it at an f4 setting with the ND filter is on at 1/8, which is that's automatically set by the camera. I just went up to f5.2 to lower my exposure a little bit. There we go. It's a little better. That's actually matching what I'm seeing on the screen of the Sony a little bit more accurately. 0 dB of gain. Again, there's no reason to have gain on out here on a day like today. All right. Now, before I turn this off, I'm going to turn the Canon on to auto mode. So excuse me 1 second while I switch that. Alright, the Canon is now in auto mode. I'm not sure I like what I'm seeing in the monitor, but again, I'm trying to limit the amount of adjustments I make because this is more for image stabilization than it is for exposure or for the color of the frame. I'm trying to see how the stabilizers hold up. So the stabilizer I had on the camera turned on in manual mode was the highest setting. Now I've switched to auto mode, and I'm not too sure how the stabilizer works when you're in full auto, or not full auto, in auto, like I am right now. But we're about to take this footage inside and see. We're about to learn a little bit about this G50. See how it stacks up in a true outside. I have not done a test like this yet, an outside test of both cameras. I've only taken the G50 outside. I've used the Sony AX53 in a side-by-side test inside my studio only, which as I was exploring more and more, I was realizing how unfair that truly was. So I'm out back now again, out in my backyard. Canon G50 is in full auto mode right now. We've seen it in manual mode with the settings I would like to use it with, or in the manner I would like to use it, with the settings that I would have chosen for the scene I was filming. This is what the camera's telling me I should use based on my my frame rate. So, all right, I'm going to take this inside, guys. See what we got. All right, talk to you in a bit. Alright, so we just looked at the side-by-side handheld footage of the stabilization on both the Canon VIXIA HF G50 and the Sony FDR-AX53. You can draw your own conclusions. Here's mine. Sony AX53 is the better camcorder when it comes to handheld use. The 5-axis gimbal inside of it is very good, and to be honest with you, it actually looked better footage wise, both compared to the Canon in manual mode and auto mode. Now there were some settings I can adjust on the Canon to match or exceed what the Sony shot in that scenario. Again, the purpose of this was not to showcase the quality of the image you can capture on either camera, but measure the quality of the stabilization that both cameras possess. The Canon was not terrible. With the stabilization off, it was, but I can set it for both cameras. I still don't like what the Canon does with its stabilization. I'm not a fan of it at all. A workaround that I would suggest, and this is what you have to, if you're going to use handheld footage, you'd have to do this probably anyway, but to shoot in 4K and then crop in. That's what, and then allow the both that method and stabilizers in your editing software to help take out a lot of the shake. You'd have to do that probably anyway. I was expecting what the optical stabilization on the Canon provided would be a better type of stabilization than what it is. I can see what it's doing, and I'm not a fan of it. Now, your opinion could be different. You could look at it and say, well, that's what we were expecting to see. We weren't expecting it to be anything other than what you just showed. And that's fine. I'm just not sure that this is the camera for me. I don't know what more tests I can do. I'm not convinced of what my decision is yet. I haven't come to a final decision yet. But I am drawing closer towards a conclusion. And I'll probably have that in the next video. After I've sat on this, I have some things I have to go do today with family. In fact, so I'm recording this right now. I wanted to record this segment before I left and thought about it. I wanted to give you my initial reaction, and that's it. The Sony FDR-AX53's stabilizer is a better stabilization for that camera. And the Canon VIXIA HF G50 is not up to snuff. If they were going to sell this camera at what they're selling it for, in the same range that they are with the Sony AX53, then they should have put a better stabilizer in it. I will say this is good. I did not notice any focusing issues with the
the VIXIA G50, which is big because I was noticing the other night, it was getting darker out, but I was noticing the camera searching for focus. I did not even have to enable touch focus on the Canon today when I was outside shooting, which again, I'm keeping track of these things because I'm looking at this camera now through a skeptic's eye. I'm noticing everything, and that is a plus. That is a pro for the camera. Outside daylight, with optimal daylight, the focus does not search. It does not hunt for focus points. And that is something that I dinged it for in my previous video, because I was just looking at it and it was searching. And I'm like, what are you doing? How are you? I have you pointed at a single object. Why are you searching for focus? I've already told you what I want you to focus on, and it would go in and out of focus. So this camera struggles in low light. I do not notice that in the AX53. I'm not saying that the Sony AX53 is great in low light. What I'm saying is that the focus does not hunt in low light situations like the Canon does. I could go on. I am going to reserve my final conclusions for another video after I have time to dwell on everything that I have seen over the last week. That's going to conclude this video for the stabilization test and review, and I hope this helps you make an informed decision. Okay? Thank you very much. Hope everyone has a great day. Enjoy the weekend. Bye-bye now.